Hi folks, welcome to RJA Impact. It has been quite a while since I've covered Ms Holmes, but she was back in court this week. She, her parents and some fans were in court with a motion for a post-trial acquittal. At the end of the day, after Judge Davila had heard the evidence, her lawyers actually told the judge and the prosecution that they plan to file for a new trial with a motion that they are basing on newly discovered information. Now I'll get back to that last point later, but for now let's get things up to date with a quick recap and then we'll go through the arguments that the defence and prosecution made to the judge in respect of the post-trial acquittal.
I'm the founder and CEO of this company. Anything that happens in this company is my responsibility at the end of the day.
So, as most of you will be aware, Holmes was found guilty on January the 3rd of 3 charges that she defrauded investors directly and 1 charge of conspiracy to commit fraud with Ramesh Sunny Balwani by persuading investors to invest in Theranos, her company, and this was despite its technology being bogus and essentially not working, having to use third-party testing equipment surreptitiously to carry out tests. The trial was originally scheduled for both Balwani and Holmes together, but the trials were severed after Holmes accused Balwani of physical and sexual abuse. In Balwani's trial, he was convicted of all 12 counts brought against the pair. And just in case you weren't aware, Holmes' sentencing is currently scheduled for October the 17th, and Balwani's sentencing is set for November the 15th. So during Holmes' trial, her defence team moved for a motion of judgment of acquittal, but after trial, prosecutors filed an opposition brief arguing that the evidence supports the jury's findings. So this is what brings us to court. On Thursday, Amy Saharia, defence counsel for Holmes, asked Judge Davila to acquit Holmes on all charges, or at the very least, dismiss the 3 counts that the jurors hung on. Her arguments started with the fact, as she put it, that the government's indictment didn't match up with the evidence it presented at trial, and prosecutors disclaimed a fraud by omission theory, but they failed to prove at trial that Holmes made affirmative misrepresentations to investors. In respect of the investors, she said, "There's simply no evidence of an agreement of a meeting of the minds between Ms Holmes and Mr Balwani. There are no recordings or emails of Holmes and Balwani conspiring together to defraud investors. Prosecutors relied exclusively on private, candid text messages between the executives to prove a conspiracy, but those texts weren't sufficient to prove a conspiracy." She also said that knowing that somebody else is making a false representation or even acquiescing to it is not conspiracy unless there is a meeting of the minds. The government hasn't shown that Holmes intended to defraud investors, and prosecutors, in quotes, core allegation that Holmes misrepresented the technology's capabilities is not based on any piece of evidence, because Holmes, in quotes, believed what she was saying about Theranos technology. In response to these points, Kelly Volkar for the government said that Saharia's arguments are based on viewing the trial evidence in Holmes' favour, but the court must view it in favour of the government, given Holmes' conviction. Also, Holmes and Balwani not only had a 10-year romantic relationship while serving as top executives, but they also both had information about the company that they didn't share with investors, which is enough to establish a conspiracy to defraud. For example, text messages show that Holmes asked Balwani what Theranos material she should include for Rupert Murdoch, but the pair didn't disclose problems with the Theranos labs or the concerns ex-Theranos lab director Adam Rosendorf had about the accuracy of Theranos tests, which led him to quit. The judge asked a question of Saharia as well. What about the significance of Holmes' admission during the trial that she added pharmaceutical logos to Theranos reports before sending the reports to Walgreens executives? Saharia replied that Holmes added the logos to the reports before Balwani joined Theranos, and so the evidence can't prove the conspiracy charge. And that's a fair point, I think. Even so, Holmes genuinely believed the pharmaceutical companies validated Theranos technology. Volkar adds that not every investor heard every lie, but it was a scheme to defraud, and Holmes and Balwani made multiple material lies to investors. Volker also countered the defence's argument that the indictment mismatched its case at trial by saying it's inappropriate to pick apart the indictment now after the trial, and what matters are the elements of the charges and the evidence at trial. Saharia, of course, disagrees with this. Holmes' email to Walgreens was imprecise, but she noted that everybody writes imprecise emails and God help us if they are all used as evidence in a criminal trial. Saharia says, "We don't believe the evidence shows that Ms Holmes made misrepresentations or half-truths, and it is not enough that she was in quotes less than fulsome. She had to make an affirmative lie." And to this, Volker responded, "We'll be here all day if she unpacks all the misrepresentations." And Volker went on to point out to various pieces of evidence presented at trial and finished by arguing that the bar is high for a motion for judgment of acquittal to be granted at this stage. So what did the judge have to say about all this? Well, let's cut to the chase. At the end of the hearing, Judge Davila said he plans on denying Holmes' motion for a judgment of acquittal. He said he'd likely side with the government given the high bar Holmes must need to throw out a jury verdict. He reasoned as follows. He must view the evidence in favour of prosecutors and that a rational juror could find the totality of evidence shows that Holmes made false representations to investors. He noted that Holmes' jury deliberated for 8 full days after a 4-month trial and, in quotes, they took their task seriously. The jury actually hung on 3 counts and acquitted Holmes on patient fraud charges, and the split verdict suggests the jury used a thorough and rational decision-making process. And that was essentially it. This is a preliminary ruling, however, and a final decision will need to be made, but I think this pretty much puts a nail in the coffin of this motion to acquit. And what about the bombshell? Well, after the preliminary hearing, Holmes counsel Amy Saharia of Williams & Connolly LLP told the judge the defence plans to file a motion of a new trial based on newly discovered information. And in response, the prosecution said that this was essentially news to them, but Amy did point out that they were still in time legally to make the claim. So what is this new information? Well, frustratingly, we don't know. And as they say, the show therefore is not over yet. Although I think I might have misstated that metaphor. The judge anyway said he wouldn't limit anybody from filing new motions, and I'm sure I'll be appraising you as soon as the information becomes available, and if you subscribe and hit the notification button, you won't miss out. Bye for now.